Hey, welcome back to the Health Bridge. Dr. Pedram here, talking about something we typically don't talk about on the Health Bridge, near-death experiences. Most of us are fascinated by stories of these and tales that touch the afterlife. I always wonder, who are these people and what are their backgrounds? My guest today has written a book about having this experience, and his background is in the world of science and medicine, hence we're here on the Health Bridge. The book is Dying to Wake Up, A Doctor's Voyage into the Afterlife. It's written by Dr. Rajiv Parti, world-renowned specialist in pain management over 30 years as a cardiac anesthesiologist. In addition to being chief of anesthesiology at Bakersfield Heart Hospital for more than a decade, Dr. Parti is a founder of a pain management institute in California, and his study of complementary and alternative medicine has led him to formulate an integrative approach to total wellness, especially pain management, stress, and depression. Hey, welcome to the show, Doc.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, this is great. I mean, this is such a fascinating topic for me. There are some early books like Brian Weiss, some interesting literature that's come out. And a lot of time, this is something that people don't want to touch, right? It's too out there and it's too weird, but you're a scientist. You're a medical doctor. You have looked at anecdotal evidence and you've looked at the scientific method your whole life. And so when you talk about an experience that has created a certain data set, this is something that you can no longer deny. So I'd love to get into the story about how this happened, and then we'll get into who you were before this and what it meant after.
Yeah, sure. I was chief of anesthesia at Bakersfield Heart Hospital, and as a first-generation immigrant physician from India, my life was going pretty good. And I was, achieving success, whichever way the modern society defines success. And I had a patient, actually it is my introduction in my book, the frozen patient, who had a out-of-body experience and described things which happened in the operating room. It was a special kind of surgery, which we call it hypothermic cardiac arrest, where no blood is flowing through the patient for about 45 minutes, especially done for a special procedure where the root of the aorta, the main vessel from the heart, the artery, had aneurysm. So the surgeon has to operate fast within 45 minutes or the patient will suffer some brain damage. And that patient described me what happened in the operating room. I thought, oh, nothing is going through his brain, some air went in or something, and I was shocked. He was able to describe what I said and where the instruments were, what was happening, but I just didn't pay attention to it. And then few years later, it happened to me, and my life totally changed after that. My circumstances were that in August of 2008, I had diagnosis for prostate cancer, and it was a radical prostatectomy where they take the whole cancer out. I had got it done from a very renowned surgeon in Florida, and it was done laparoscopically. What I mean is by small holes in the belly. But 2 years after that surgery even, I did not get my continence back, or I did not get my potency back, and I was having chronic pelvic pain. Then I saw a doctor at UCLA, and he thought the best way is to implant an artificial device to help me control my bladder. So in the early part of December 2010, I had the surgery done where he implanted a device known as artificial urethral sphincter on my right side, the scrotal area and the right groin area. But unfortunately, that got infected, and it became a severe infection. I had high fevers, and they had tried IV antibiotics, very heavy-duty antibiotics like gentamicin and vancomycin, but it was not touching. Until and unless the source of the infection is taken out, the health does not improve. And then during the emergency surgery around Christmas of 2010, I saw myself about 10-12 feet up in the air looking at myself. I was shocked and I was wondering what's happening. So much so, I thought maybe the anesthesiologist gave me a drug like ketamine, which is a dissociative anesthesia and is usually not used in adults. Usually we use it in children for burn dressing changes, or if somebody is very, very sick. And during my out-of-body experience, I went through different realms. You want me to describe the whole journey?
Yeah, so just to kind of frame this, you went into emergency surgery, things didn't go right, all of a sudden you're floating over your body, and at this moment, are you cognizant of what's happening? Are you listening to the conversations? Is it very much like the experience your patient was telling you?
Yeah, so much so the anesthesiologist told a joke, and I repeated the joke to him in the recovery room, because part of anesthesiologist's job is kind of to keep room cool and entertain the surgeons if anything stressful is going on, And during my out-of-body experience, I went through different realms. The first realm was that, I went to India, where my mother and sister were sitting and having a conversation. From there, my consciousness went to a realm which was fire was raging, people were crying, and I could hear the noises, and it was like a hellish realm. And I was crying and was in pain and asking for help. And the person who came to my rescue was my father, who had died about 30 years ago. No, he had died about 30 years ago, and that time. And I had a very, very difficult relationship with my father. I loved him and I hated him. Growing up, he was very strict and he used to beat me a lot, sometimes for no reason. And then he led me towards a tunnel, and there he gave me some words of advice, where he told me, my son, if you keep your consciousness clear and you're truthful to your own self, the universe, the divine will take care of you. And those are the words I'll try to live by. And actually, these are the same words he had told me when he died. He was dying after a bypass surgery in Fresno about 30 years ago. And from the tunnel, I went to the other side. There was greeted by two angelic beings. Michael, who introduced me as, everything was telepathically, it was just came to the consciousness. Michael and Raphael.
You knew it was Michael and Raphael by...
They told me.
They told you who they were.
Yeah. I'm raised as a Hindu, and I have heard about angels, but I had never done a study about them. And when I told my wife about this, she said, what happened to the thousands of Indian god and goddesses?
What about our guys?
I know. But I said, I got to tell you the way it happened.
Yeah. And so they introduced themselves.
And later on I read and I got the knowledge that it made sense. Michael is the angel for strength and truth, and Raphael is the angel or the patron saint for healers. He helps in healing. That's why a lot of these people who are New Age people, they like Raphael a lot for healing. And then they guided me towards the light. And the light was like 1,000 suns at the same time. And it was shining like so bright, but it was not hurting the eye. And later on, I was reading my Hindu book, Gita, Bhagavad Gita. And there, Lord Krishna shows Arjuna the same view exactly. And I was shocked to read it.
It's very common. Most out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, if guided to the light, have a very similar story and pattern. Usually have some angelic beings, a grandfather, a father. There's so many commonalities in this that it makes it amazing and intriguing that there's so much data that kind of supports the same type of narrative. Yeah,
and exactly, it is described in Gita, the Indian book Gita. Where Lord Arjuna asks Krishna to show me your universal view, and then Arjuna got scared when the Lord Krishna showed him that view.
Yeah.
And then he said, "Now come back to your regular, human form. So, and then I was told basically that my life will be spared, but my life going forward will be totally different. You know, I sold my house after after this incident. I changed my cars. I used to have a Hummer and a sports BMW. Now I drive a Camry, hybrid Camry. So I kid with my friends, my life literally went from Hummer to hybrid. And I started pursuing spiritual healing methods like energy medicine, Ayurveda and meditation. And I got training at Deepak Chopra Institute, University in San Diego. So that's the path I've been following.
So let's go back real quick. You hover over a table. You notice that you're in the OR. You recall something from the OR. Then your consciousness phase shifts into a room with your mom and sister. Did they say anything in there that you remembered, that you were able to recall, that you were able to bring back?
Yeah, I was able to talk to them after 2-3 days that, the dress they were wearing and they were talking about, it was evening time in India because my surgery was 7 o'clock, 6 or 7 in the morning in UCLA. That was evening time in India.
And so you said, hey, here you guys were sitting here at this table wearing this in the evening, and they were able to corroborate that they were indeed wearing that attire?
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Because one thing could be like, okay, well, so your consciousness was partly there in the operating room, so you were able to hear the joke because you were partially checked out, but a part of you, your brain was able to hear it. But to know what mom and sister were wearing on the other side of the planet suddenly starts to open this up to the other math.
Yeah, I was actually discussing this with doctor, who coined the word near-death experience. And he said, because there is no literal time and space in the other dimension. And that's what, Deepak Chopra talks all the time too.
Yep. So then you go to a hell realm. Dad comes out and says, hey, you got to go find spirituality, and I was wrong. Pulls you back, hands you over to Raphael and Michael, who take you towards the light, and then your eyes open. I love the play-by-plays.
No, and then actually during the tunnel, I had a review of my life. Like my present life, and incidentally, I had a review of 2 past lives also. And the 2 past lives made a lot of sense to me because one of them, I was a cruel prince, and as a prince, I was whipping the poor farmers, and my soldiers were whipping too. And I used to have pain in my right hand where I had surgery, like here I have a big scar here. And I asked for forgiveness from the farmers, and my pain went away. So, it was amazing. How can you go back and ask for forgiveness? Like, yesterday only I was reading some article in a CNN site or something, can future affect the past? And they were talking about quantum physics. Mathematically it is possible. Time does not necessarily go forward only. It can curve, it can go backwards.
So you went backwards. You were kind of a jerk as a prince, not being cool to the commoners, and you were whipping them, and then you asked for forgiveness in that space?
Yeah.
And then it also showed you your own life currently, right? So you were able to kind of get a good look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of who you were prior to lying down on that operating table.
Yeah, exactly. The life was like I could not just see, but I could. The main thing was I could feel what the other person, my patients, my family, or my kids were feeling, especially my eldest son. Where I was repeating the same behavior my father repeated towards me, being very strict, very hard. And my grandfather was same way to my father. So it was a generational thing to break that cycle. That got broken.
Oh, thank God, thank Krishna, thank Raphael, and thank Michael, or whoever else was there along that path. Isn't that amazing, right? It goes unquestioned, and by the time you know it's happened, you've already done it to your kid. And so... Yep. You saw this, you felt this, and then, I want to stay on the play-by-play, given the given the nature of this, I just want to see like, so now you're feeling your life, you're seeing your life, you're going through your karma, and just give me the play-by. This other realm to me is fascinating.
Oh yeah, and other life I remember was like I was a poppy farmer in Afghanistan with a henna-colored hair, and I started tasting the sap, and gradually I became addicted to the opium sap, and that manifested in my present life as addiction to pain medicines, because when I had pelvic pain and hand pain, I was prescribed opioids. And being a pain management doctor, it was not difficult to get hold of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's interesting. And it's not arbitrary that you subconsciously, unconsciously chose to be a pain management doctor in this life either, right? It's amazing how all these things line up. And
so we do carry, I honestly believe we carry tendencies from the past lives. And, you know, some of my friends, we get into an argument like, you mentioned Brian Weiss. I had actually gone to Brian Weiss' a workshop, and you know he does past life regression. What I view, let's assume the person who goes in past life regression is describing his struggles, his issues, or what he has. And actually, in the book, his first books, Many Lives, Many Masters, he talks about somebody with anxiety attacks, and at least it is coming from the person's subconscious, even if it is not from the past life. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting literature around this. I'm a big fan of Robert Monroe and his early work, where he started having out-of-body experiences and mapping the brain states and all that. And you know, even some of these ayahuasqueros can do that. So a lot of these ancient spiritual masters, there's a doorway to that timeless place, and countless people have had access to this over the years, and it's radically transformed them. So here you are, you're I want to say a regular guy, but I mean you're a highly accomplished physician who's kind of being a jerk to his son, and running his life and doing what doctors do and living that life, and then bam. I think that the subject matter that we're talking about is just so far-reaching, because you're not a guy that would make this up. You weren't some hippy-dippy woo-woo person going into this. And then you have an experience that was undeniable, and you have data from that experience that actually is hard to refute in some ways, right? And so when you look at that and what it implies, it really makes you have to rethink who you are and what the hell's going on here.
Exactly. My life totally changed, That's why my wife and I have two boys and a daughter. My boys were very skeptical, usually young adults, and my daughter was more accepting. And then when they saw a new dad, like my nature changed. That's the main thing. I used to be short-tempered, angry, and, every aspect of my life changed. My character, my relationship with God, with my wife, with my children, especially the eldest son. Like my eldest son dropped out of medical school after 5-7 years, and I lost $300,000. I used to be so mad. But then after my experience, I was accepting it, and he wanted to go in computers. Now he's doing computers in University of San Francisco.
Which is arguably going to make them more money and keep them happier.
Yeah, I know, with all the changes in the healthcare nowadays.
Yeah, I know. Most doctors I know don't recommend healthcare to their kids, which is a whole other show, but that's a sad state of affairs. Now, how prepared were you for this? I mean, so you have your personal life where you're reading the Bhagavad Gita, and you have, you go to the festivals, and you kind of, you do the religious stuff because it's cultural, but how much of this was in your fabric? I mean, you certainly didn't learn about spiritual matters in medical school, did you?
No. Actually, when I was 18, I had become spiritual that time. I was reading spiritual books that time. I even went from my house to the Himalayas to become a monk of Ramakrishna Mission and Vivekananda. But then they told me to go back and finish my medical school. But then I came to America when I was 22, 23, something like that, in 1982. And the American dream bug caught me. I forgot about the spirituality. And then I would do things culturally, but not from my heart or from my spirit. Like Diwali is there, or Indian festivals will come along. We'll get together and have fun.
Yeah, eat some sweets. See some family. So you say you studied with Vivekananda. You went to Vivekananda's ashram.
Ashram, yeah.
Yeah, I spent some time there. So it's
Balloon Mutt?
Yeah. So I was in Rishikesh and then Lakshman Jula, and I spent a fair amount of time in those hills.
Big hospital in Haridwar.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. There's this university of consciousness that they have held for hundreds, if not thousands of years, that have been studying things that matter, spiritual matters that matter. And it's very easy to come over here and get comfortable in a Hummer. And so, and
I used to feel like the king of the road. I still remember if any little car like a Mazda 3, which my kids have, would cross me, I would go after them.
Yeah. That's it's how the pervasive consciousness of materialism is really kind of working its way into all of us. And so you actually had the good fortune of having an infection in a surgery that almost killed you to snap you out of it, right? Which is a really...
I'm very grateful for this experience, and it changed my life. I became a more caring person. Living from the heart, and that's, as I said, I was addicted prior to this incident, and addiction is always, my belief, has an underlying trauma or stress behind it. Addiction is a symptom of an underlying cause. And that's why I call it as a disease of the soul. Like, if you change your consciousness, like I have read a lot about Buddhist and Hindu philosophy and other religious philosophies are more spiritual than religious, that can change everything.
Yeah, and unfortunately, most people come to that after hitting rock bottom, after getting into a lot of trouble, destroying interpersonal relationships. It's destroying their health. I mean, being addicted to. We had someone from the CDC on the show not too long ago, and opioids they're trending, man. It's not good.
No, they are actually more people addicted to prescription drugs than illegal drugs.
Yeah, but we have a war on drugs.
We always have war on things.
That's and that is also a reflection of our consciousness, right? And so you had a war on little Mazdas before this, right? It's how our consciousness gets aligned, us versus them. I've now risen to the top. I'm the doctor, they're the patient. I'm big, they're small, and so you had that kind of smacked out of you, right? And that's not an easy experience to go through. So what was it like?
Big thing for me was I started developing later on in my studies, I would say, like my heart chakra, the heart energy, that opened up. I started having empathy and caring for my patients. Technically I was very good, like before my incident. That's why I became the chief. In a difficult case, I would be requested to do it. But I didn't have that heart-to-heart connection with my patients. Like one lady I described in my book, in my pain management practice, she came to me. She wanted to talk to me because her husband was dying of cancer, but she had arthritis. I just wrote her a prescription and walked away. And they have shown studies, if doctors sit down and talk the same amount of time or put their hand on their hand or their shoulder, it makes a big difference to the patient that they got treated like a human being, not an object.
Which is the number one criticism of our medical system going in, is it's so dehumanizing and unpersonal in ways that make people go off and do all kinds of other things because they're not getting what they need on a humanistic level within the existing system. So So I want to before we get too far out of this realm, you had these experiences, you had your kind of karmic reconciliation, and then what? Your eyes open? I just want to kind of come back to the surgery room.
I opened with a jolt. My first recollection after the incident was in the recovery room, not in the operating room.
So your heart didn't stop. There weren't any weird kind of like alarm bells going off with the anesthesiologist on duty. You were just knocked out. You come back. Everyone thinks, okay, great, successful surgery. You're a different guy.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's why my book says dying to wake up. It was not necessarily a total physical death. It was more a spiritual death.
Yep. So you died. The old person who went onto that table died, and then you came back. Someone
Yeah.
based on a decision you made, a commitment you made, new terms negotiated. Like, what did that feel like being a new person?
It feel like having touched the light, and that transformed everything.
So you were transformed.
I was transformed. And actually, in my book, I talk about a few days later, I even did a self funeral, because I remembered from my days when I was trying to become a monk, when somebody goes into a new life, he gets a new name and they do this self funeral. Like I threw my stock. I used to be big in stock market. I have made millions, lost millions in stock market during the internet days, and stock market books, pain medications, and all my scrubs. I threw it in the fire, as if that chapter is closed for me.
Did your kids and your wife think that you'd absolutely lost it?
My boys especially thought that.
Yeah, Dad came back and he's cuckoo, and they're like, "Well, we can't wait. We can't wait for you to come back to your senses."
Yeah, especially my eldest son. But he liked they all liked the new dad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Dad wasn't being a jerk to him either. I mean, so he probably had the same resentment harbored that you had for your father, given the circumstances. So how did you go about healing that?
Through love. Like my mantra, the one which I talk about is forgive, love, and heal. And forgiveness is a big thing. Forgiveness is not just a thing you say, "Oh, I forgive you." It's not condoning the action, but it's kind of a letting go. So I had to forgive myself for getting addicted to the pain medication. I had to forgive God. I used to be mad at quote unquote God at why my life had changed so much. It was going pretty good. I had to forgive my father, and I wrote letters to them, to God, to Father, and to myself. And then I burned those letters in the fire. Like the ashes, the smoke takes it to the devas.
So there's a piece to this that, so you came back, you're a transformed guy, but I want to just get clear on this. You didn't come back as a transformed guy walking on water. You came back with new resolution to burn that which was not useful, to transform the way you were operating. So there was work on the other side when you came back. It's not like you came back like a saint healing people.
No, you're right. I did not came back with the like I could heal people with my energy. I did study energy medicine and those things, but I did not come back with as a saint they describe in the literature.
Right. So you had a transformative glimpse of what life could be like, what life truly is, and then you had to reconcile your new kind of vision of it with the life you were living down here on Earth, like the rest of us have to do.
Exactly. And that's why my goal is to help people wake up. Actually, my corporation name is Wake Up Now, and that you don't need to have a near-death experience to wake up. Yeah. I talk about three things: prayer, meditation, and service, which I call seva.
And that becomes a vehicle for transformation by stepping out of the kind of narcissism and self-righteousness and really getting into, the good stuff.
Actually, modern science, so many positive psychology. Now, modern science is psychology is going towards positive psychology, and I think it's Dr. Seligman and other people have shown that if you have gratitude and you have positive thoughts, you can really reconnect your brain.
Yeah, and it's just beginning. I mean, Marty Seligman's work is fantastic. There's a lot of pioneers in this space. People, Deepak talked about this 20 years ago, but that kind of reconciliation of science and spirit, and kind of breaking the ranks, and like yours didn't happen because you went to self-help classes. Yours happened reluctantly. Like you didn't want to be this guy. It was your turn. And
yeah, I know. Now, nobody can really answer the question why some people get near-death experience and why some people don't get it. There's so many things one can't explain,
Well, and to your point, I don't think people listening to this show should say, okay, well, I can't wait to have my near-death experience so then I can have my aha. It's pretty damn gestalt.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about is prayer, meditation, and service. as part of what...
Service is a big part.
Service is a big part because it makes things bigger than you, and you are doing things that are bigger than you, and you're out of that kind of self-serving consciousness, which is all about me and my Hummer.
Yeah, that gives this contribution to the society, to the universe, of connecting to something higher than you. And actually, I say you don't even have to believe in God for this fulfillment at your heart level. Like, for example, I talk about people who don't believe in the the Judeo-Christian view of God as a white guy with a beard sitting in the sky on a throne. It could be some higher values. Like for me, it is preventing child pornography. My blood boils when I hear about child pornography. Innocent children, no fault of them. You hear about them in Cambodia, Thailand, or even in U.S.
Oh yeah, Oakland is a big hub for sex trafficking right here under our noses in the U.S. So is Atlanta. I mean, there's plenty of things that you can get charged about and have moral conviction for that have nothing to do with ancient books. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's. Or
it could be preventing abuse to the earth.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, just out of curiosity, what did Michael look like?
Michael had like wearing a blue-colored clothes, and he had a sword in his hand. One thing I remembered is a sword.
Was he a white guy? Was he a brown guy?
He was a brown guy to me. Very Middle Eastern.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and that's also it, right? Like, you have the accounts of people who go through and you see what you see, but there are kind of undeniable feelings and associative memories that come from some of these NDEs that are really, I mean, they're life-changing. They're earthquake caliber stuff. It shakes the foundation of who you are, and you can no longer go back to being that person. So you are now teaching consciousness-based healing.
Yeah, basically more of, and I'm concentrating developing a protocol especially for addiction.
Good.
Addiction and depression and pain. I was given understanding that I suffer from these things so I can help other people. And I'm working with some few people who have believed that, the consciousness, basically altering the consciousness, like practicing loving kindness and forgiveness and compassion. Like the Dalai Lama says, my religion is kindness.
And so now you're kind to your son, you're kind to your patients, you're kind to the people around you, and now your new kind of dharma is spreading that kindness. You mentioned something called a light shout.
Yeah, light shout is, like is a kind of meditation where I take people through my near-death experience as if they are going through it.
Interesting.
And they experience the light. Some, about 50% of people experience the light.
Interesting.
And I keep them connected to their body by this silver cord. So, they just consider to have the connection with the body.
Yeah, there's all sorts of conversations around quantum entanglement and all the things that we can kind of postulate in quantum, but the ancients have been talking about this for a very long time, and you can connect with their consciousness and take them on that journey, and the fact that they're able to go there and have these experiences, that's pretty profound.
That is profound. Actually, in my book, I talk about the experience I had when I was doing a Buddhist retreat, where I actually went beyond the light. It was total, absolute darkness. And when I talked to my Buddhist teacher, he said that is the Buddhist concept of emptiness, the shunyata, zeroness. Yeah,
yeah. The Taoists call that as well, the primordial Tao. Well before there was light and dark, there was nothing and nothing, right? And these, and these are people who dedicated their lives for thousands of years, generation upon generation, of the exploration of the inner realms to look at consciousness.
And this is available to me and you and everybody, by practicing, like Buddhist meditations or regular TM meditations or even Kabbalah, there are ancient techniques.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're right there. They've always been there. Yeah,
and it's not just for Hindus or it's for every religion has that.
Well, look at you. You're a Hindu guy who gets accosted by Michael and Raphael. Like, what does that say about the kind of ubiquitous nature of all of this and how these dividing lines are really arbitrary and down here, not up there?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. So the book, I find this fascinating. I'm a big fan of this, and you were thrust upon this, obviously, and now you are doing the honorable thing by doing. I don't know if you have a choice, really. Is you now this is your life. This is what you do. So you're teaching, you're writing, and you're sharing this. And so what's the name of the book, and where can our listeners and viewers?
My book is available. Actually, it can be pre-ordered on Amazon. It's Dying to Wake Up. And if people were to do Amazon search under my last name, which is Parti like party, instead of Y it is I for India. It's very easy to remember, P-A-R-T-I, and my first name Rajiv, R-A-J-I-V.
Great.
They will be able to find it.
Great, great. This is wonderful, and for what it's worth, your experience has become all of our experience, and so I thank you for going through that kind of dark night of the soul and coming out the other side, and frankly doing the work, because you could have come out on the other side and not done the work, and we wouldn't be here talking about this. So exactly. You did your part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doc, thank you so much for your contribution, and you have really added to the show, so thanks again.
Thank you very much. It was my honor to be here.